Hey all, it's September 10th, 2023 today. In this video, I'm going to give you an update on the mangoes that I planted about a year ago in my backyard. So on logistics, you'll notice that I do have a frame up overhead over these plants. And that frame is really beneficial because it allows me to put up shade cloths. So I have 70% over these plants. This is situated south exposure. They would otherwise get blasted with sun all day. You'll notice a lot of the experienced hobbyists out there go with frames, and it really makes a whole lot of sense. You can control the environment a whole lot better for these plants. Make sure that they're shaded in the summertime so they're not experiencing leaf scorch, branch dieback, all of those bad things that can happen when the plant gets too much direct sun. And then likewise in winter, when we experience freezing temperatures, you can go ahead and cover that frame with frost cloth. So as you can see, I've actually extended this and put up a second frame. It's, I believe, about 80 square feet, so it's a little shorter. I have a lot of mulch down on the ground. And as I water these container mangoes, then my in-ground mangoes benefit. So it just made sense to consolidate and put everything in here. As far as failures with these mango plantings, I did, following our winter, this last winter, have 3 mangoes die. 2 of them were seedling varieties and 1 was a grafted plant. I've had no failures or deaths in summer. So it was just that winter aspect. And what happened there was my overstory tree had lost all of its foliage, and we had a late frost, and it settled on those plants, and it ultimately killed them back down to their roots. So that just reinforces the importance of having a frame up or some kind of cold protection for these mangoes when we get into freezing temperatures. So I'm going to give you a tour of all the mango plants that I have growing in the yard. I started with just 1 a few years back, and now my collection has grown to almost 30. So I added 11 plants just in this calendar year. And just for logistics, I have 9 of those varieties in the ground. Only 2 of which are grafted, and the rest are all seedlings. And then I have 20 varieties in container culture. So we'll take a look at the progress here. Starting out, this is a Glen mango. This is one of the few grafted ones that I have in the ground. It is actually a few years old. I got this from a mail order nursery from Florida. Has never fruited, and it has been very slow to grow, but finally has put on some growth this year, multi-branching. I think it's responding well to the shade cloth. Over here I have a cack. This is a polyembryonic seedling. This one has definitely grown quite a bit just in the past couple months. So I would say has doubled in height. And what I'm liking is I see that the bark is starting to mature, so it's putting on that brownish skin on the trunk rather than just being that green stem. Behind here is a lemon meringue, another polyembryonic seedling variety. This one I got this year in 1 gallon, but it quickly outgrew that, and I now have it in a 7-gallon. Behind the lemon meringue is one of the original polyembryonic seedlings that I put in last year, coconut cream. You can see that the stem has thickened the trunk. It's just starting to get some skin on the bark, some brown skin, but not fully, lignified at this point. And I'd say has about doubled in size. Coconut cream is on the slower growth rate though, similar to cack. Over here is a creamsicle seedling. This one was put in this year, was planted as a 1 gallon, and has put on a lot of growth. This is a monoembryonic variety, so this will be a unique variety once it does fruit. It's not true to seed when it's mono. And given this was a larger plant to begin with, you can see that the bark was already lignified, so pretty mature. What I will say is that I probably made a mistake planting these seedlings at only a month old, it took them a really long time to establish, whereas if you container grow for the first year and then plant them year 2, you're going to get better growth rates because they'll be stronger plants, larger root system. Probably common sense, but this was all experimentation. Here in the middle is my Nam Doc Mai. This is my second grafted mango tree and oldest in the yard. I've had this for 4 years. It has fruited, not this year, but you can see it's grown a lot of branching and is doing well. A Nam Doc Mai is going to stay more of a short tree just because it does have a dwarf growing habit. It really doesn't grow all that fast, and I found even the seedlings don't grow all that fast for that variety. You can see I've got a Nam Doc Mai in the container, and it hasn't done a whole lot. It's nearly the same to what it was coming into spring, so the slowest growing of all my different varieties I'm growing. Next door is a cotton candy, another polyembryonic variety. This is one of my fastest growing varieties. Highly recommend cotton candy if you want a vigorous seedling. This one was topped. I top all of these mangoes at no more than 2 feet tall so that I can encourage branching, lateral branching for that bushy habit. I don't want them to be real tall. So it's about, I would say, 1 year and 3 months old now, and is now sitting in a 7-gallon container. So put on a lot of growth. Next door to cotton candy is the Sugarloaf in a 4-gallon container. This was purchased recently from Lara Farms in Florida. It's a grafted plant. It has done very well. Quickly outgrew its 1 gallon and is now in the 4-gallon. And I topped this one as well, again to encourage the branching. This sweet tart next door, I just recently got a few weeks ago. It was in a 4-inch pot. This is now in a 3-gallon pot. Very, very fast grower. And this is also polyembryonic. Behind sweet tart is my Sinclair. This was purchased as a 1 gallon last year, so it's coming on just about 2 years old. This tree would have been very tall if I hadn't pinched off the growth. It wants to grow vertically, but when I first got it, I did cut it down low to start the scaffolding branches, and you can see even recently did that again to cause more side branching, and then just recently topped it yet again. So it's got a good network of branches on it. And it's about 5 feet tall at this point, sitting in a 15-gallon container. Over here, I've got my Keow Savoy also in a container. This is a polyembryonic seedling. This too was purchased last year as a 1 gallon. Has really grown quite a lot. Bark is fully lignified at this point, and it's got multiple sets of branching going on at this point. So behind that Keow Savoy, I do have another CAC mango. The one in the container is also fairly slow growing and hasn't done a whole lot. So I think it's just the nature of that variety. It's not as fast of a grower, fairly slow. Next door is the triple sec mango. This is a grafted variety, another one I got from Lara Farms as a 1 gallon. It's grown well for me. It's still sitting in a 3 gallon at this point, hasn't rooted that out, but moderate growth habit. It's doing well for me. Down here, these are brand new seedlings. Both of them are mono-embryonic varieties. Again, from Cocoa Tropics 239. Get a fruit punch and an ice cream. The ice cream is, I would say, fairly good grower, but the fruit punch is similar to sweet tart. It's growing really fast and probably will need to be up potted soon, even though this has only been in a 1 gallon for a couple weeks and came in a 4-inch pot, so quite a vigorous variety. But as this is mono, these both are, they're not going to be true to seed, so keep that in mind. Here we have a coconut cream. This was one of the original ones from last year, so this is probably about 1 year and 3 months old. This is done very well in container culture, and compared to the in-ground plant that was near the same age, this one has doubled in growth. So Coconut cream can do quite well in container culture. It's going to be more slow growing if you put it in the ground, it seems. At least that's been my experience. Over here I've got a grafted Kesar. This actually came in a 3-gallon from Lara Farms and quickly outgrew that. And I've now got it in a 7-gallon container. It's put on a lot of growth and it's doing quite well. Over on this side I have some more container mangoes tucked in. Another grafted mango. This is Carrie. It was in a 1-gallon, but very small even in its 1 gallon and wasn't fully rooted. This is a super slow growing variety in my experience. Hasn't done a whole lot. It's sitting in a 3-gallon right now. Surprisingly, this Philippine mango is actually a year and 3 months old, but unlike some of the others I've shown you that, have really put on a lot of growth, this one has not. I did cut the stem fairly low, so you can see multiple branches, but it really hasn't put on too much growth. So somewhat surprising, but this one seems a little slower. Mahachanok. This is a grafted variety from Lara Farms. 1 gallon I purchased fairly recently. It is sitting in a 3-gallon right now, and it's put on some decent growth since uppotting it just a couple weeks ago. Okrung Tong. This one I got as a 4-inch plant, I would say 3 weeks ago or so. You can see how vigorous this variety is. Definitely a poly variety. You can see all those multiple stems down there. It quickly outgrew the 1-gallon pot, so it's sitting in a 3-gallon right now. Next door is a lemon Zest. This one's been with me for about a year and 3 months. Whole time within container culture. This started out again as a 1-month-old plant in a 4-inch pot. This is now sitting in a 4-gallon pot and has grown quite a lot. You can see that it is starting to also lignify up the bark. Still green mostly, but is starting to develop some bark. So I would put this at about medium growth rate. Okay, this is a sweet tart. This one too was about a month old when I got it a little over a year ago. It's put on some really good growth. You can see it's multi-branched and doing well in container culture. Okay, here's my Manila seedling polyembryonic variety in the ground. This one was planted last year at the same time as the others, was about a month old. You can see it's much taller, but I also did not top this one plant. Coming down at the bottom, you can see also that some bark is growing on this, and it's definitely thickened up since it was first planted. So it's growing nicely, but at a slow rate, just like the other in-ground varieties. Here we've got a lemon meringue polyembryonic seedling. This one is about a year and 3 months old, but only went in the ground in spring, so has not been in the ground as long as the others, and also went in at a much larger size because this one was container grown for about a year. So really put on really nice size. You can see the bark is fully lignified at this point. So lemon meringue definitely has grown quite a bit in ground. Seems to be tolerating our soil well. Of course, I will mention that this is planted on a slight mound, so it is in amended soil, which probably accounts for why it's growing a little bit better than the cac and coconut cream that are not in amended soil. Here I've got a pina colada. This one too was very, very small, planted this year and doing pretty well. Again, sitting on a mound in amended soil, but putting on some decent growth. Next door to this pina colada, I have another one in container culture. This one too is about a year and 3 months old. Has been grown in a container the whole time. You can see it's not all that tall. This variety, like Nam Doc Mai, stays shorter and more bushy just naturally. Seems to have more of a dwarf growing habit, at least that's my observation here. And the bark is starting to lignify on this one as well. Next door we have a Floragon, also about a year and 3 months old, in a container. This just recently got uppotted, So Floragon has definitely put on a nice amount of growth, but not the fastest grower of the lot. I would put it at around medium growth rate. The last one to show you is another Nam Doc Mai. This is the polyembryonic seedling that I bought last year. So this one is about 1 year and 3 months old. This was a transplant this year to this spot. It is in amended soil, sitting on a slight mound. And similar to the one in the container, it hasn't done a whole lot. Very slow grower. So all in all, I'm pretty pleased with the pace of growth on these plants. Putting them under the shade definitely dials them into the right light exposure that they need, and will really allow me to protect them too during the winter. As far as watering goes, every mango plant in the ground is getting about 3 to 4 gallons of water per day, split up between 4 watering sessions. The container plants are getting, I would say, about 2 gallons of water each day, just once a day. The addition of that decomposed granite with the peat moss and the perlite, 1:1 ratio, really seems to be the ideal mix. It's fast draining, yet the moisture retention is quite good, so I don't have to water these more than once a day. As far as fertilizing, when I potted these up, I used an Osmocote initially to feed the plants, and then I also, every 2 to 3 weeks, will do a water-soluble Peters Foliage Special, which is a 24:8:16 ratio, so fairly high nitrogen. When I apply that fertilizer, I'm doing it at a quarter dilution of what the directions actually tell you to do, because I don't want to burn these mangoes up. What I like about that formula is it has sulfur baked into it. It is synthetic, but the pH is around 5.5, so these mangoes are able to take up that fertilizer very well. It also has some micronutrients in it that these plants need. They do go through food pretty fast because they are in a container and that fertilizer washes out. So that's why I feed them so frequently. So I'll continue to do that during the growing season. Of course, once we get into cooler weather, I'm not going to be feeding as often. Hopefully I covered everything. If you do have any questions, please leave those in the comments. Thanks for watching and happy gardening.